I just can't give you a whole spiel. I don't even know where you're sitting at.
Kawhi Leonard is in Toronto, but he is not a Raptor. Sit with that for a second, because it's the whole story. A month ago, the Clippers and Raptors agreed to one of the biggest trades of the summer. Leonard goes home to the city where he won a title. In return, Toronto sends out Brandon Ingram, Grady Dick, 2 unprotected first-round picks, a future pick swap, and a pair of seconds. That's a haul that bends an entire conference. And then the paperwork just stopped. Leonard flew north anyway. He sat courtside at Kyle Lowry's jersey retirement. He waved to the crowd, and he stayed, on paper, a member of the team that just agreed to give him away. Here's what I want you to understand up front. This deal didn't freeze over a medical or money or cold feet. It froze over an investigation that started as a podcast and has quietly turned into the most dangerous cap case the league has seen in 25 years. There's also one move buried inside this, a quiet one made days ago, that I couldn't stop thinking about once I saw it. Hold on to that. I'll come back to it, and when I do, the whole thing snaps into focus. Start with what the Raptors were told, because that's the tell. When the two teams agreed to terms at the end of June, the league didn't approve the trade and handed Toronto a warning instead. The deal can only close if you, the team getting Leonard, agreed to eat whatever penalties land on his contract when the investigation ends. Not the Clippers, you. Read that again. Toronto would be trading real players and real draft picks for a contract the commissioner might be able to erase. So they stopped. Both teams put out statements the same Thursday, 9 days after the trade leaked. Polite statements, careful ones. Both saying the same quiet thing underneath. Nobody wants to be the one holding this grenade. Even the reporting turned into a hall of mirrors. One version had the Raptors warned early and pushing ahead anyway. Another had the league informing the Clippers, then walking it back to say it hadn't. Who knew what and when became its own little scandal on top of the big one. And when the paper trail is this tangled, it usually means the thing underneath is worse than anyone wants to say out loud. So let's go back to the beginning and let the numbers talk. September 2021, Steve Ballmer puts around $50 million of his own money into a green banking startup called Aspiration. That same month, the Clippers signed Aspiration to a sponsorship. The figure, $300 million. The company becomes the first founding partner of the Clippers' new arena. 6 months later, Aspiration signs Kawhi Leonard to an endorsement deal. The number there, $28 million over 4 years, paid to a company Leonard set up called KL2 Aspire. Say that name slowly, KL2 Aspire. His initials, his jersey number. The front half of the sponsor's name, stamped on a shell company like a signature nobody even bothered to hide. Here's the part the league couldn't stop staring at. According to the reporting that cracked this open, the only real thing Leonard had to do for the $28 million was keep playing for the Clippers. No ads he had to shoot, no appearances he had to show up for. Get paid to be a Clipper, and that, almost word for word, is the exact thing the salary cap exists to stop. The man who exposed it was Pablo Torre. He put internal documents on his podcast. He put Aspiration employees on there too, describing the deal in their own words, a bonus off the books, dressed up as a marketing contract, understood inside the building as a way around the cap. The league responded the only way a league run by lawyers can. It hired Wachtell Lipton, one of the most feared law firms in the country, and told them to dig. That was 10 months ago. 10. This investigation has now outlived a full regular season, a playoff run, and the entire opening of free agency, and is still sitting unfinished on Adam Silver's desk. Now the Clippers have never blinked, and I want to give their story its due, because it might actually hold. Their story is simple. The real villain here is Aspiration and his co-founder, a man named Joe Sandberg, who is currently serving 14 years in federal prison for defrauding his own investors. Ballmer, they say, was one of those victims. He introduced Leonard to the company and knew nothing about the deal that came after. It's clean, it's plausible. Whether the evidence lets it stay clean is the entire ball game. And this is where I come back to that quiet move. Days ago, with the investigation still open, Leonard fired his own people. He pushed aside his longtime agent, Mitch Frankel, and more than that, he pushed aside his own uncle, his longtime advisor, the man the whole league just calls Uncle Dennis. In their place, he hired a new agent, Harrison Gaines, to run his next contract. Now, players change agents all the time. Nobody blinks, but a player who's under active league investigation quietly cutting loose, the exact advisor is sitting at the center of that investigation right before a new deal? That's not nothing. That's the tail inside the tail. And to understand why Toronto flinched at all of this, you have to understand why Uncle Dennis specifically makes them flinch, because they've lived it before. Let's go back to 2019. Leonard has just given Toronto its first championship. He hits free agency and Uncle Dennis runs the negotiation. According to Bruce Arthur of the Toronto Star, the demands that Uncle Dennis had became the stuff of league legend. An ownership stake in the Maple Leafs, $10 million a year in extra sponsorship money, the Raptors were somehow supposed to match. And when the team pointed out that half the companies in the city would happily put Leonard in commercials, the answer that came back was 4 words: we don't want to do anything. The Raptors understood exactly what that meant. Not an introduction to sponsors, no show jobs, money for nothing. They said no. Leonard signed with the Clippers. Now hold that 2019 wish list up against the 2021 aspiration deal. The shapes line up almost perfectly. Same structure, same idea. Same insistence on money that isn't attached to any actual work. Toronto watched this exact movie already once, and they know how it ends. So when the league asked them to guarantee a sequel with their own players and picks on the line, they wanted no part of it. Which brings us to the strangest image of the whole summer. Leonard, not even a Raptor yet, showing up at Kyle Lowry's retirement, waving to a crowd that used to love him, and Lowry up at the podium, sliding the knife in with a grin. He tells the room that with a guy like that, your championship is the only aspiration. The only aspiration. Nobody in that room thought that that was an accident. Okay, the stakes, and they are enormous. If the investigation finds a cap was circumvented, the commissioner can void Leonard's contract outright. And voiding it doesn't just erase the money, it erases the one thing Toronto needs to keep him. See, the Raptors can only offer Leonard the extension he wants, 2 years, around $124 million, because they'd hold his bird rights. That's the exception that lets a team pay its own free agent over the cap. Void the contract and nobody holds those rights. Leonard would have to squeeze into whatever open cap space exists this late in the summer, and almost nobody has any. He'd lose a fortune, and the Raptors could be left holding an empty roster spot where a superstar was supposed to land. The Clippers side is worse, and it comes with a precedent that has teeth. The current agreement lets the league fine a guilty team up to $7.5 million, suspend the people who knowingly ran the scheme for up to a year, and void the contracts involved. That's a ceiling on paper, but the case everyone in the league actually remembers is Minnesota. In the year 2000, the Timberwolves got caught running a secret side deal with Joe Smith, and the commissioner at the time, David Stern, initially stripped 5 first-round picks, 5, plus a $3.5 million fine. Now look at the Clippers. They are sitting on a stack of future first-round picks. That stack is their next decade. A penalty anywhere near the Minnesota range wouldn't dent the plan. It would delete it. Kawhi cost them everything once on the way in when they mortgaged the future to pair him with Paul George. He could cost them everything a second time on the way out. But, and this matters, there's a floor here too, in a version where the storm just passes. The Minnesota case had one thing this case might not, a written agreement, a confession basically in ink. The aspiration allegations, as damning as they sound, still lean heavily on employees describing what they were told, not documents proving what the Clippers actually knew. And Silver himself has signaled that a mere appearance of misconduct isn't going to be enough. That the league, for all its power, still owes a standard of proof it can defend. So it's entirely possible this ends with a fine, a shrug, the trade quietly closing, and Leonard finishing his career as a Raptor. Fans would scream cover-up. The lawyers would call it the totality of the evidence. Now strip all of it away. The picks, the bird rights, the courtroom words, and what you're left with is a story about a promise. The salary cap isn't really an accounting rule. It's the agreement that lets 30 owners with wildly different bank accounts compete on something close to level ground. And every single time a team finds a clever way around it, that promise gets a little thinner. That's why this case matters way beyond Los Angeles, because the league now has to decide out in the open whether that promise still means anything at all. And here's Silver's real problem. Both of the easy answers are bad. Come down hard and he's punishing his richest, most supportive owner. On evidence, a neutral arbiter might just overturn on appeal. Let it slide and he's told the other 29 teams that the rules bend for whoever can afford the right accountant. That's the decision sitting on his desk right now, and it will not stay there much longer. So here's the question I actually want from you, down in the comments, because I don't think it's obvious and I go back and forth on it myself. When that report finally lands, does Adam Silver drop the hammer that Minnesota felt in 2000? Or does he find the lawyer's off-ramp that keeps his best franchise whole and his cap looking honest enough? One of those answers protects the rules. The other one protects the room, and he does not get to pick both. Tell me which one you think he takes, and tell me why, because whatever he decides becomes the new price of getting caught. And every front office in this league is going to be reading that receipt very, very closely.